You are now listening to Mark's Unexplained World by Mark the Medium, available on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Podbean and most other podcast platforms. Tonight's episode is about the Salta UFO. So it's over to you now, Mark, for this week's outer space adventure.
While having lunch at around 1:45 p.m. in the afternoon of the 17th of August back in 1995, several witnesses claimed to have seen, and I quote, a sort of flying saucer of a bright metallic colour come out of the sky over the Serrania Colorado region of Juan V. Gonzalez in the Salta province of northwestern Argentina. These witnesses also claim that as the unidentified flying object passed over the small community, of which by now all were also watching, it was followed by, and again I quote, two other objects that were probably missiles, which would eventually impact against it. Soon after the incident, a civil aviation pilot of his own accord managed to take to the skies on several search and locate missions, and although he never managed to locate the crashed UFO itself, his findings and the following shadowy events were certainly of interest to someone. In fact, the many researchers who would take to examine the Salta UFO case over the years would highlight how it had all the hallmarks of a shadow government, which would indicate some sort of alien-human agreement. And, just to add some fuel to the already conspiracy-lit fire, several months earlier, on the 14th of February the previous year, numerous onlookers also witnessed strange lights in the sky over the city of Salta, with many of these witnesses reporting that they saw these bright lights that were round in shape, appearing to be moving very quickly across the sky. The Salta UFO case has become so popular and intriguing that ufologists around the world now regard it as the Argentinian Roswell. Greetings, Unexplainers. Thank you for tuning in once again and listening to this conspiracy-related episode of Mark's Unexplained World. My name is Mark Hughes. I'm a medium, a ufologist, a true crime buff, and a man with a very dark and disturbed sense of humour who lets strangeness dominate his life because, hey, who wants a normal life anyway? But just to give you a better idea of who I am and what I do, every week, usually on a Tuesday, I do a podcast on the many wide and various subjects that fall under the unexplained banner. These include ufology, hauntings, disasters, and all sorts of other paranormal phenomena, including true crime, unsolved crime, serial killers, and the occasional missing person that often goes unnoticed. So, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review or an opinion of this episode's subject that I can reply to, a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel. Or, if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about the unusual story surrounding the Salta UFO. And this week's necessary disclaimer. Well, this story is pretty much PG, so just sit back and enjoy. However, you still listen at your own discretion. Also, all opinions and comments are strictly my own, but the facts of the case still remain. I also apologise if I pronounce anything incorrectly. My English, although it is my first and only language, it was only the other day that I found out that a can opener that doesn't work isn't called a can't opener. Yeah, you probably already gathered. I've been working on that one for quite some time. Anyway, let me get back to the story, starting with a bit of geography. According to Wikipedia, Salta is a province which is in the northwest of the country of Argentina, with its neighbouring provinces being, from the east clockwise, Formosa, Chaco, Santiago del Estero, Tucumán and Catamarca, with it also surrounding the extreme northwest of the country of Jujuy and laying to the north borders of Bolivia and Paraguay, with Chile lying to the west. The total land area of the province is 155,488 kilometres squared, or 60,034 square miles, making it the 6th largest province by area in Argentina. And, according to the results from the 2010 census, the province of Salta has a population of 1,214,441. The Salta province is located in a geologically active region and consequently suffers from the occasional earthquake. There have been 4 earthquakes of note in the province, but the most famous, or most renowned, depending on your point of view of course, is the one from 1962, which registered 7.0 on the Richter magnitude scale, with this particular earthquake being the inspiration for Salta's annual citywide festival, which is held on the 16th of September every year, in honour of El Señor y la Virgen del Milagro, who, according to Salta's population, is said to be the Lord and Virgin of the miracle. Before I go into the details of the UFO account from Salta in the August of 1995, I want to go back in time a little bit to a sighting still in Salta, but from the February of 1994. It all started in the early hours of the 14th of February 1994, when, above the city of Salta, witnesses started to report seeing bright lights in the sky which were shaped like discs and appeared to be moving very quickly. These odd bright lights made many locals panic, with some people claiming that they even heard what they described as an explosion, followed by the experience of an intense heat. One of the many witnesses to this event was a local resident named Juan Pablo, who recalls seeing, and I quote, circular lights moving at a high speed, along with him reporting the experience as both being terrifying and at the same time awe-inspiring, describing in a later interview that the lights were so bright that he felt as though he was actually being drawn towards them. He also, during the same interview, reported hearing the aforementioned loud explosion, followed by the intense heat. Following these strange occurrences of the Salta Light Show, the area was then soon swamped with officials, soldiers, scientists and various other people, either in military uniform or in various shades of white lab coat, who were all sent to the scene to figure out what had caused the mysterious sightings. What all these government officials discovered at the Salta location is still to this day shrouded in mystery. However, apart from the area being sealed off, the official report does mention that they found a lot of debris that was spread out over a vast area of the region, and that subsequent analysis has now suggested that this debris in question was both originally from outside our Earth and was also constructed using substances that cannot be found on our planet. But whatever it was that the officials had found in the area, one thing was for sure: anyone who sought to enter the spot was promptly denied entry. However, all this refusal of entry into the supposed UFO crash site really did was fuel the conspiracy theorists into asserting a cover-up, claiming that the government and military were hiding the truth and trying to cover up the fact that a UFO had indeed crashed in the area. Due to any lack of any hard evidence, there have been numerous theories bandied about over the years to try to explain the Salta Lights phenomena of February 1994, with some people saying that the mysterious skylights were the consequence of a failed military experiment, and others believing that the lights were part of a secret government program to open a multi-dimensional gateway. But the most popular explanation for the Salta Lights holds that aliens were responsible for the phenomena and that the UFO crash was their attempt to communicate. Although, personally, I would have just stuck my hand out of the window and waved, but that's just me, I suppose. It is still unclear as to what exactly caused the light show over the Salta sky in the February of 1994. On a quick interesting side note, a multi-dimensional gateway, according to the Astro Harmon's website, I think I've got that right, is a setting through which multi-dimensional beings can pass in order to immediately access locations far away in time or space. After this first short break, in part 2, we will look at the next Salta UFO incident from the 17th of August 1995.
This show is brought to you courtesy of Neil Packer and the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. Find them online at www.hauntedresearchcentre.com or at 9 to 11 Regent Street, Hinckley, LE10 1AW. Open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for guided tours of the haunted rooms at just £3 per person. Booking is essential at all times, and over 16s only please, unless accompanied by an adult. The haunted rooms are extremely haunted, and paranormal activity could, and has, taken place at any time. Some areas and particular objects or items can be quite scary and unnerving. Membership is available for £25 to qualify for selective offers. And why not download the app, available on both iOS and Android, for only $3.99, to keep up to date with what is coming up at the centre.
One afternoon, on the 17th of August in 1995, while the sun was shining and the birds were singing, a gentleman and pilot going by the name of Tony Galvano would witness, and I quote, "a sort of flying saucer of a bright metallic colour come racing out of the blue skies over the Serrania Colorado region of Juan V. Gonzalez in the Salta province of northwestern Argentina. And as this unidentified flying object, or UFO, flew over this small community in the city of Salta, which by now had many witnesses to the event, it was then followed by, and again I quote, two other objects, probably missiles, which would then impact against it, and then, according to the witnesses, the UFO suddenly began to fail and fall to the ground. A few moments or so later, after the UFO fell to the ground, it was then followed by a powerful explosion which filled the air, followed by an intense seismic movement, with this aftershock of seismic activity being felt almost 200 miles away. There were indeed reports that suggested residents in the towns as far away from Salta as El Quebracho and El Galvano that would notice the sudden reverberating activity. After the sighting and the intense seismic movement, the somewhat shocked local residents of the area would then witness, and I quote,
"A column of thick black smoke
that was rising into what was once a clear blue sky, with the original witness and pilot to the Salta UFO event, Tony Galvano, later stating that he'd, and I quote, never seen anything like it, and that, as far as he was concerned, it was most definitely a solid craft." I'm just going to take a short break from the Salta UFO incident and talk a little bit about the origin of the terms UFOs and flying saucers. Most of you probably already know that the term unidentified flying objects, or UFOs for short, is the description given to any perceived airborne, submerged or trans-medium phenomena that cannot be immediately identified or explained, with, upon investigation, most UFOs being identified as known objects or atmospheric phenomena, while however a small number remain unexplained. During the late 1940s and through the 1950s, UFOs were often called flying saucers or flying discs based on the reporting of a private pilot called Kenneth Arnold, who had his own UFO encounter on the 24th of June in 1947. The acronym UFO was coined by Captain Edward J. Ruppelt for the United States Air Force when he wrote, and I quote, "Obviously the term flying saucer is misleading when applied to objects of every conceivable shape and performance. For this reason, the military prefers the more general, if less colourful name, unidentified flying objects, UFOs." The term UFO became widespread during the 1950s, at first in technical literature, but later in popular use. Another term that is now often used is unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP for short, which first appeared in the late 1960s. The term UAP has seen increasing usage in the 21st century due to negative cultural associations with the original term of UFO. As well as the aforementioned term unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP is also sometimes expanded as unidentified anomalous phenomena. While technically a UFO refers to any unidentified flying object, in modern popular culture, the term UFO has generally become synonymous with alien spacecraft, so the term extraterrestrial vehicle, or ETV for short, is also sometimes used to separate this explanation of UFOs from totally earthbound interpretations. Another acronym that is used for when dealing with unknown phenomena is the term unidentified submerged object, or USOs for short, which is an unidentified object that is submerged in water. However, the US Navy classifies USOs as whales, sharks and other sea creatures that can interfere with ship manoeuvring, sonar operations and oceanographic research. Whilst many of the residents and various witnesses of the Salta UFO incident would run towards the scene in order to get a better look at what they perceived to be a crashed spaceship, the original witness and pilot, Tony Galvano, decided to run towards his own private Flystar aeroplane, which was being stored at a nearby airstrip, also known as the Martin Miguel de Guimes International Airport, which is about 4 miles outside of Salta. Once there, he would jump into his Flystar aeroplane, take off and fly into the sky to investigate. He decided to concentrate on the area where the crash had apparently occurred, known as Serrania Colorado. There, the flyer saw a huge column of smoke, which he described as, and I quote, "a cloud of soot with metallic particles. The search turned up nothing new. I found nothing." The problem was that due to this huge column of smoke that was a consequence of the supposed crashed craft, when Tony Galvano looked down, he couldn't locate the wrecked object anywhere on the surface. So after flying around the same patch of sky many times, and due to all the hazardous thick smoke, Tony Galvano then decided to call it a day and return to the airstrip, saying that staying up any longer would be dangerous flying. However, this setback didn't deter Tony Galvano from his trying again, details of which I will go into in part 3 of the show. Over the next 2 weeks, Tony Galvano was devoted to finding clues as to what could have happened that day on the 17th of August in 1995. However, unfortunately, without any positive results. And again, according to Tony Galvano, when he met with a group from the National Police Department, not only did they forbid him from continuing the search and pursuing the investigation, but they also informed him that he was banned from flying over that specific region of airspace. However, Tony Galvano, being a person with a staunch sense of curiosity, decided to continue the investigation anyway, along with a group of locals who were also motivated by a similar sense of inquisitiveness. And good for them, I say. News of the Salta UFO incident eventually reached the ears and eyes of the Argentine national media, which included television, newsprint and radio, with it being shown on programmes such as one by the Argentine TV host Suzanne Giménez and the late TV and radio host George Ginsberg. Also, an Argentine TV news programme called Telenoc, along with other various Argentinian magazines like Gente, decided it would be a great idea to dispatch some of their news correspondents and journalists to the UFO incident area. However, when they all got there, they found that not only was there never any official word as to what occurred there on the 17th of August 1995, but all that remained on the site was a burnt-out area measuring some 500 metres wide by 5 kilometres long. After this second short break, in part 3 we will look at the second attempt and consequences of Tony Galvano's flying trips over the crash site, the legacy of the Salta UFO incident, and a couple of other strange sightings over time in the area.
Fright Nights was established in 1999 as the first company in the world to offer overnight ghost hunt experiences to the general public, pioneering paranormal events since the last century. Fright Nights operate at hundreds of the UK's most haunted and exclusive venues. All events have their own team of experienced paranormal investigators, mediums and psychics. They have a VIP members club for regular returning guests, offering loyalty discounts and exclusive invitation-only events. They can also host private events for your family and friends. You can contact them on 07852 998 628 or email them at office@frightnights.co.uk, or take a look at their website at www.frightnights.co.uk, where you can see the many locations they investigate and learn about them and the opportunities they have available. Hundreds of ghost hunters join Fright Nights every month for the most thrilling ghost hunting experiences they'll never forget. If you haven't been on a ghost hunt before, then why not join them to see what it's all about? Why not visit their social media sites for up-to-date information on all the places they visit and to see what's coming up in the future? They look forward to seeing you all soon. Fright Nights Ghost Hunting Events. Remember, only the original will do.
After a time, and while all this media attention around the Salta UFO incident was still going on, Tony Galvano would once again take to the skies. Only this time his flight over the area would be much more worthwhile than his previous flight on the day of the crash. As he flew over the crash site area, he saw below him what appeared to be a large impact print that was around 3 miles long and 600 metres across, which, to Tony Galvano anyway, was obviously the site. Was obvious that the site had undergone some form of intense friction heat by a giant heavy object. As he brought his plane down a little lower, he could clearly see that the trees, which had previously resided within the impact area, were now tossed to one side or another, having been completely ripped and torn out from the ground. But what was even more strange is that these same trees appear to have these bizarre markings, with Tony Galvano saying during a later interview that these markings looked, and I quote, as if they'd been sprayed with acid. Suddenly, and without warning, his aircraft began to lose altitude, with its engine spluttering, ready to pack up. Realising that his plane was not going to make it anywhere near an airstrip, Tony Galvano prepared for an emergency landing. Despite being beaten and bruised a little from the plane's impact to the ground, Tony Galvano was largely uninjured and was able to walk away, although possibly with a slight limp, from his usually very reliable but now damaged plane. As he walked away from his broken aircraft, while possibly wondering how he would fill out his insurance claim form, he started to look around the apparent previous UFO crash site, and whilst he was there, he bent down to pick up some of the earth below, thinking that it could be proof, perhaps, or of something untoward. At a later date, and as Tony Galvano was not one for giving up, he and several other volunteer searchers from both the nearby and local communities decided to make their way on foot back to the UFO crash site. But while they were rummaging through the woodlands and jungles of the area, suddenly, and again without any warning, there were several heavily armed men wearing black suits that arrived on the scene, travelling in a black heavy-duty 4x4 vehicle. Tony Galvano and his team of volunteers soon realised that this posse wasn't a choir boy outing or Miss Daisy's day trip for under fives, when the leader of the heavily armed men informed them that they, meaning themselves of course, were now taking over the search and informed the volunteer group that they should go home. After that, the heavily armed men would refuse to talk with the volunteer group or allow them to roam freely in the woodlands and jungles of the area. Tony Galvano claimed that the last thing one of these strange, and I quote, men in black said to him was that he should, and again I quote, "Forget it. What's coming down is very heavy." It was a sentence that remained in Tony Galvano's mind like, and again I quote, "letters of fire." The strangeness for Tony Galvano didn't just stop there, as over time he would begin to receive some very strange phone calls that always had a very odd sort of presence at the other end of the line, greeting him with nothing but a hair-raising and intimidating silence, with these calls almost always coming either late and or in the middle of the night. These very strange phone calls were eventually sufficient enough to make Tony Galvano so spooked that he would physically end up leaving the area where he lived for several years. Meanwhile, these, what were described by locals as the Men in Black, by all accounts would remain in the district for the foreseeable future. However, shortly after these Men in Black left the area, Tony Galvano, again being the serious hawkshaw that he was, would return looking to investigate the Salta UFO incident further. One of the things that was unknown to both Tony Galvano and the other witnesses to the Salta UFO incident of the 17th of August 1995 was that there was a similar incident just under a fortnight earlier in the early hours of the 2nd of August that same year. And as with the 17th of August event, this had also had multiple people that would witness it. According to reports, on the 2nd of August, as an aircraft was approaching Bariloche Airport in the foothills of the Andes mountain range, there was seen a bright white unidentified flying object that would suddenly approach the incoming plane at a very high speed, a speed at which, by all accounts, would be defying the laws of physics. As well as the pilots on the plane, there were also the Argentine military and several other civilian people on the ground who were going to witness what looked like it was going to be a Class 1 collision. However, the pilot of the aircraft, being on the ball as it were, would then very quickly move his plane off course in a successful bid to avoid what could have been a guaranteed demolition. And furthermore, whilst this UFO was flying over Bariloche Airport, all the computer and power systems on the ground went bonkers, with this power system outage hitting a vast majority of the city. After the pilot of the collision-avoiding aircraft took a moment to catch his breath, when he looked out of the front windscreen of his plane, he saw there, directly in front of him, the strange craft again, only this time it was just hanging in the sky, hovering. So, once more, the pilot turned to avoid another collision, only this time, and rather unexpectedly I feel, the UFO turned with it, flying alongside the plane for several moments, and as it did so, two green lights suddenly appeared at either end of the craft, followed by an orange light that would then connect the two green lights in the centre. And as the plane came into land, the strange craft would initially follow until around 3,000 feet, and then at this point the UFO rose at supernatural speed and vanished out of sight. But let's get back to the 17th of August in 1995 and the original Salta UFO incident. According to the original witness, Tony Galvano, he and many other locals who also witnessed the event have always maintained that what they saw that night was indeed a UFO. He also said, and I quote, "Vegetation never grew in that site again, and the area was closed off, with the Air Force invoking reasons of national security." To this day, the details of the Salta UFO incident have never officially been disclosed. I won't lie to you people, there are a lot of conflicting reports about this event, especially regarding dates, time and even places. So what I tried to do was take the most popular information from various sources and try to turn it into one hopefully interesting story. So if I have got a couple of dates wrong, I can only apologise, but to be honest, I don't think it really affects the bulk of the story. After all, I still believe it to be a true account of the events from those nights in question. Also, whilst doing my research, I did find another very small snippet of a UFO incident within the same area of the Salta province dating back from 2009. So I thought I would just tag this onto the end of the show. So here goes. So let's come forward a few years to the 27th of November in 2009, when in a considerable part of the same area as with the original Salta UFO incident from the August of 95 was left in the dark after midnight following a blackout which occurred at the same time that dozens of witnesses reported seeing a UFO over the city of Joaquin V. Gonzalez in the Salta province of northwestern Argentina. Yeah, that's it really, but it's still worth checking out for yourself, see if you can find more information. Well, more than I have anyway.
Thank you all for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. In our next episode, show number 139, we are going to be looking at Route 666, the Devil's Highway. Route 666 is a road full of unexplained phenomenon that has occurred throughout history and considered to be one of the most famous roads in North America. The road itself expands for approximately 200 miles, and even though the highway is very popular, many travellers try to avoid this barren stretch of road.
This show was written and researched by myself, Mark Hughes, and proofread and edited by Linda Hughes. The pronunciations, I've got to apologise, some of those names were a little bit tricky, was all mine. The actors in this episode were Mark Hughes, Linda Hughes and Denise Poolar, with special thanks to Neil Packer and the staff at the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley. And of course a big thank you to everyone for listening. We never run out of ideas here at the office for the Mark's Unexplained World podcast, but if you know of any other intriguing stories under the Unexplained banner, including ufology, hauntings, disasters, and any other sort of paranormal phenomena, as well as true crime, unsolved crime and missing people, just drop me a direct message and I'll see what I can do. I will also include the name of the person who suggested the idea in the end credits of the podcast, if they wish me to do so, of course. And again, just to add, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel. And if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. I thank you in advance. Mark's Unexplained World, because there's more to the paranormal than meets the third eye. And remember guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. This show and all its contents are covered by the basic copyright of Mark the Medium.